Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to a careers edition of CEO Talks. Today we're joined by Tajinder Singh Baring from DPP Solicitors, who are business and tax specialists. Let's meet Tajinder and find out more about his career and his life. Tajinder, welcome to Seek Channel.
Thank you for having me, have you? Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. And you're a solicitor, a director of a specialist law firm. Can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day job?
Yeah, my day-to-day job is representing clients who fall foul of predominantly HMRC, whether it be in terms of tax inquiries, litigation, investigations, or more mundane things where they've had maybe products and stock seized, all the way through to director disqualifications, and matters such as those. In terms of my day-to-day life, it can involve anything from sitting down with clients, spending time at their businesses, understanding their businesses, or going to court.
That's tremendous. So a lot of variety in your work.
Yes, there is, yes.
And why did you become a solicitor?
I think as I was growing up, obviously from a Sikh family, it was always quite important to go to university and get a good job. I was never really liked the sight of blood, so I think it was either going down this route or maybe accountancy. And
one of the three favoured professions for our community, yes. Medicine, accountancy, or law, and you picked law.
I picked law, yes. It was a more of a default choice than anything else. Went to universities, thoroughly enjoyed my my law degree.
Where did you study?
In Birmingham. I went to a local university in Birmingham. Again, coming back from my parents are from India, who didn't really understand or appreciate the differences between university at the time. So I just went to the local one that was nearest to my house.
And what's that like, having parents who are first generation, who are recent immigrants to the country? Has that given you a very traditional base?
It has given me a very traditional base. Obviously, it's always Punjabi at home. That's the language they speak. Come from a very close-knit family. There's only, I think, 7 or 8 of us in the UK, believe it or not, in terms of our family. And going to university was more of a, I think from my parents' point of view, especially my mum, it was more of a photo on the wall to say that her child has gone to university, as probably is quite a lot with our communities.
They're very proud, but also with that pride and expectation, is there pressure? Was a lot of pressure on you?
There was a bit of pressure on me. However, my route to university was quite unconventional. I actually went to university when I was 23 or 24 years old. So after college, I went off to work, worked full-time, realised that not taking anything away from those kind of jobs, but barely make ends meet. And one day I just decided to go to university and become, just to better myself.
That's tremendous. And let's talk about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Originally born in Handsworth, you know, quite I think a solid Sikh community there. And then at the very early age of about 5 or 6, we moved to South Birmingham, where things were very different to Handsworth. You know, usual suffered a lot of racism and things like that. But I think...
Was it quite a tough time?
It was, yeah, as a childhood, moving out of Handsworth to where we moved to, it was very tough in terms of racism. You know, from a very young age, having never experienced it to where we were, it was very difficult. I'll never forget that.
And how do you, that childhood experience, what lasting impact did it have upon you? What did you take away from those hard times when you experienced racism?
What I've really taken from it, I think it's made me want to do better for myself and my family. And I think that drives me. It's given me that drive. Every day I get up and I want to be the best person that I can be in life as well as work, and in order to just be able to support and help my family.
And do you work very long hours? Do you find you working very long hours?
It can very easily. I try not to. But
do you have a good balanced work life?
I think I would like to say yes. I think my wife would definitely say no to that. But I think, you know, sometimes 14, 15-hour days are very common. But I try and do then on the opposite days where I can get away with it, come into the office a bit later, leave a bit earlier, try not to do any work on the weekends anymore. No.
Because as a director in the company, there's a lot of pressure for fees and winning new client business, and business is very tough in every sector at the moment.
Of course it is extremely tough, and like you said, you're constantly on the go. Mobile phone is switched on all the time, even, dare I say it, when I'm abroad on holiday. Emails, telephone calls, that's just part and package of the job role, that is.
And is it a sacrifice worth making? If you had your time again, would you prefer to do something else? Being a high-flying lawyer, it is very demanding, it is very hard work, and it seems you're at a young stage in your career, so you have to work very hard. But if you had your time again, would you do something different?
I've thought about this quite a few times, and there are days where I think to myself, there's got to be an easy way of making a living. But when I'm sat at my desk working on the cases that I work on, I thoroughly enjoy my job, and I don't think I would ever change that. And I think if I had my opportunity again, I wish I had just gone to university that little bit earlier in order to qualify that little bit earlier. They're the only things that I would ever change.
And how do your parents feel about you now that you're a solicitor and a director in a law firm?
I think, to be honest with you, with my parents, Mum passed away quite a number of years ago. No, it's okay, thank you very much. So it's just from my father, and there's always that relationship with your father is always that little bit different. If the truth be told, I don't even think my father knows that I'm a director of the firm. I think he knows that I'm a solicitor, and I would like to think I've made him proud. But in terms of directorships or anything like that, I really don't think he knows. It's just something that, we never really discuss or talk about or anything. I don't like bringing work home because it's stressful enough anyway. My father's quite elderly now, and I just want to make sure he's happy and he's well.
That's tremendous. Yeah. The legal profession has changed a lot over the years. As you know, I've also worked as a lawyer for many, many years, and it's become very tough, and often I have to think very carefully when people ask me about a career in the legal profession, would I recommend it or not. My own experience was great. I did extremely well, but now it has changed a lot.
It has changed a huge amount in the last 10 years. It has changed enormously. Fees, everything, you know yourself, they're cutting fees. Not even by 10-15%, sometimes 50% plus. It is a very difficult market at the moment. However, my advice to anyone really is, if you can become professionally qualified, doesn't necessarily mean as a lawyer, it could be an accountant, doctor, whatever profession it is, it will give you the opportunities that, put simply, you just can't get working in a, I don't want to belittle it, but in a blue-collar job. And I really do recommend people go to universities, take the opportunities that are given to you. Likewise, obviously with your background, your parents are from India, likewise with mine, they came here for a reason, and that was to provide themselves with a better life, but for us as well. And if we don't take those opportunities, I think we owe it to ourselves and our parents to take those opportunities.
Absolutely, because our parents didn't have the same opportunities. It's important that we do strive and do the best we can. But with that, is there unnecessary pressure and expectation, particularly in our community? Because if you don't become a solicitor or a chartered accountant to have a successful business, it affects all your prospects and your standing in the community.
I think I agree with you on that 100%. I think there is this underlying current thought process where parents especially, they want their children to go to universities. It's more of a kudos thing than go to university and do well. On top of that, I think in our own community, people are driven by money, dare I say it, not necessarily success. I do find sometimes I represent all kinds of people and from all kinds of backgrounds, but in the Asian community in particular, there is that foundation, that basis of money. they want money in order to be able to buy the more expensive cars, to buy the designer clothes. So I think there is a huge amount of pressure to make money. Sometimes it may not be focused in the right way and they go down a different path, but there is that pressure is there.
How can we readdress that balance, do you think, and focus more on success of all types, success in the arts or in sport, rather than just business or commercial success?
I think it's it's down to us as the next generation to, when obviously you have children, I don't, but it's down to us as the next generation to be able to instill that into our children. That doesn't necessarily mean traditional professional jobs.
Yes.
It could be, like you said, as a sports person, it could be in arts, it could be in entertainment. But I think where we come from, the typical jobs of being a doctor, an accountant, or a solicitor, they were your more of traditional, solid jobs where our parents knew if you become one of those three, that you will have a very good life. Whereas I think for us now, we've reached a certain platform where hopefully our children can develop on that and build from that. And we'd be able to provide them with the support, both financial as well as physical and mental support, for them to be the best at what they can be in their chosen field.
And do you spend a lot of time on social media? Are you on LinkedIn and Instagram every day?
I'm on LinkedIn. I catch up every now and again. But in terms of social media, I'm not really a social media person.
But some people are absolutely hooked.
They are.
And spend several hours a day. I know a particular person who spends many hours a day on Instagram, and she spends all her day just on Instagram. It's just amazing.
I deleted my my Facebook account when I was doing my LPC, because I found I'd be sat there trying to do revision, but I'd have my Facebook open in the background. 10 years ago, Facebook was, I mean, it's still big now, but 10 years ago it was absolutely massive. There was nothing else. And I just couldn't do any revision, so I just closed everything off. And since then, really, I've not had any social media at all.
And what about artificial intelligence? Will that take away your job in another 10 or 15 years' time?
This is quite a significant topic of conversation at the moment. AI in the legal field. I think from the job that I do, I don't think it will. However, I do think there are areas of law out there that it probably could do. Yeah, I really do believe that. I think mine is more, you have to understand when someone has a tax inquiry, for example, you have to really understand the organisation, the business. AI wouldn't be able to do that. That means I have to go into the business, I have to go through the paperwork, speak to staff, understand how the business operates at a foundational level in order to then represent that business and put forward what I need to put forward to HMRC, for example. Whereas if it was more of a, where you have firms that operate on A, B, C equals D, I think AI could come in and take jobs away from that.
More process-driven legal work.
Yeah.
And Tajinder, what do you do in your spare time? How do you find time for yourself in terms of leisure?
In terms of my spare time, I try and spend it with family. Recently got married last November, so there's a lot of family functions coming that I all of a sudden have to go to. Spend a lot of time with wife's family as well. Obviously, me and my wife would go out, holidays, just general stuff, going out, going to the movies, going to the theatre and things like that. We do try and do something pretty much every weekend because we both have professional jobs, and just to get away from it and to relax.
Your wife works at KPMG,
Yes, that's right, yeah.
which is a very important and a demanding role as well, and very high pressure. And how does that work in the relationship? Because both of you have very demanding jobs and roles, and how do you balance your work with your home life, and who takes care of the house and so on?
It's a joint effort. She's a lot better at me than finding that work balance in life, whereas I tend to bring things home as well. I'm trying to work on that and take, to follow her footsteps on that. In terms of doing things at home, We tend to do that together, jointly, whether it be go grocery shopping, even cooking, we try and cook together. Cleaning, we try and do everything together. We have certain roles that are hers and my roles, but apart from that, we do try and do things together.
That's great, because often in a relationship, it's very important to have support.
Yeah.
And do you get sufficient support in your role as a director? Are you supported by your wife and your family to succeed? And how important is that support for you?
The support is very important to me. I think I've learned so many things from my wife, in terms of just she's much more of a go-getter than I am. I like to think that I am as well, but she's a lot more driven than I am. But her drive is in order to have a better home life than an actual work life, whereas I'm a bit more the opposite. But without her support, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today.
Very important to have a good relationship that helps your success. And in terms of your future career plans, where do you see your career going? Will you be developing this existing role as director of the law firm, or do you want to perhaps become a sole practitioner?
I think this is something that I always, when I was maybe a bit younger in my practice, I always thought that I wanted to open up my own firm. And I have a lot of friends that have opened up their own firms, and they are very successful. However, I think over the last few years, I've realised that perhaps I don't need to open up my own law firm. I can develop this brand into the work that I do by bringing in the work that I do and servicing my clients, and in the remit whilst I'm working for a national firm. Whereas when you are a sole practitioner, you have your one office wherever you decide to open it, and it is very difficult. Whereas with myself, I've got access to offices all over the UK and lawyers that on the end of the phone that actually work for my firm with me, alongside me, whereas I don't think you'd have that same ability as a sole practitioner, certainly not straight away.
And as a sole practitioner, you have all the additional stresses and compliance issues and all the burdens that go along with running a business.
I mean, one of the main things that we have to do is money laundering checks. Any fee that comes in, you have to run that ML check. And if the truth be told, my ML checks is as simple as sending an email to the ML officer with the relevant data on it, with the documents attached to it, and then he carries out the rest, and I simply get an email back that I just need to print and keep on my file. Whereas if I was a sole practitioner, I would have to satisfy myself that that money was from a legitimate source.
Absolutely. And looking forward, what are your plans within the company? Will you be developing your expertise further in tax and business areas, or do you intend to go into other practice areas?
No, I think with the area that I work in, it is quite a diverse area. It could be, like I said to you at the beginning of this, it could be anything from a director's disqualification all the way through to a multi-handed tax inquiry in terms of multiples of millions of pounds. There's so much scope for work that I just want to develop a more niche practice in that area.
It is a competitive area of practice. It's quite a specialist area, but the very large firms also compete for this type of work. How do you acquire new clients? Do you have to undertake a lot of networking, business development? How important is that?
I think networking and business development is extremely important. You are right, the biggest firms in the UK do carry out the same work that we carry out. I think being a slightly smaller firm than them, we can offer a more personal experience and representation of that client, which I think pays dividends. But in terms of business development and networking, it is so important just to be able to get your name out there and explain to people that you are there and what you do and what you can offer them.
And in terms of your client base, do you act mostly for Asian clients because of your own background? Is that a advantage for you?
I don't think it's a disadvantage. I think whereas our advantage, and when I say ours, as being Asian, is that we have our languages that we can speak, where we can represent those individuals, but we also speak English because we are educated here. So we can represent non-Indians as well as Indians and vice versa. A lot of my clients, they come from all kinds of backgrounds. They're not just Asian, English, Asian, they come from all kinds of backgrounds.
That's tremendous. Tajinder, what advice would you offer to any aspiring students who want to become solicitors?
I think the advice I would give them is enjoy your degree, really get to the end of it. If you enjoy it, then progress further and do the LPC. But if you really don't enjoy it, then perhaps you need to think of a different career path. But more than anything else, just enjoy what you do, because I think that is so important. If you don't want to wake up in the morning and go to work, I think it's such a waste of time.
It is very expensive being a lawyer, being a student and studying law. The LPC is £10,000 or more. It's a big investment. Should people make that big investment and take on that big cost without the security of a job?
It's the training contract is the most difficult thing, as you know yourself. I took that risk and it paid off for me, but I know plenty of people that have taken that risk and it hasn't worked out for them. I think you know in yourself whether you've got the fundamentals to make it work or not for yourself. For me, I never once doubted myself. I knew that I would qualify. It was just a case of matter of when and where.
And how did you qualify? What was the turning point, or was there something you did which helped you get a training contract?
No, I actually, believe it or not, I started off in this firm as work experience 1 day a week while I was at university. And when I finished university, I then did my LPC. And when I finished my LPC, they offered me a legal clerk's job, minimum wage many years ago. So I think about £10,500 at the time. And but I worked and I enjoyed what I did, and I worked without any fear. And I think that is what allowed me to really build my skill set. And I think it was about 6 or 7 months after I started full time that they offered me my training contract.
So you worked very hard, you proved yourself,
Yeah.
and you were willing to take a low salary
Yes.
in a junior role.
Yeah.
And with that, you became a solicitor.
Yeah.
That's tremendous.
That's exactly what it was. I remember, you know, in my junior role, it would often involve photocopy, making teas and coffees. You know, these are things that, you know, I look at now. With the photocopier we've got in the office, if my secretary's not around, I don't even know how to use it. But that's what it took back then.
And so you'd advise anybody starting out to start right at the bottom and work your way up, work hard, and show what you can do.
Yeah, from my own point of view, I think it's the only way you can really learn your job, represent people just represent people properly by knowing how it works from the bottom up. And I think it's very important to never forget where you've started and where you've come from. It's one thing that I will never forget. I treat everyone the same in my firm, whether it be from the gentleman that opens the post and puts the letters on your desk all the way through to other co-directors. Everyone gets treated exactly the same.
Tajinder, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experience and your thoughts about your career as a solicitor director in a specialist law firm. We wish you well for the future, and I hope you'll come and share your experiences with us again.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Tajinder, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.